Hello all, this is the Owl, and today, oh yeah, at last, it's the bit you've all been waiting for. Hunt 3 is where Gantz really becomes Gantz, and I know that it's many of your favorite bits. Ditto Hunt 9. And for those who've asked me if this is, in fact, the best part of Gantz, that's actually a fair question. How would I explain this? Well, Night at the Opera has Blind Guardian's best song on it, but I don't think it's their best album, if that makes sense. And Night at the Opera still frigging slaps. Hunt 3 is a banger. It's really great, and it's where the series finally puts all of its cards on the table, and we see what we're in for. But in my opinion, it's only the start of the truly awesome parts of Gantz, which probably peak at around Hunt 9, after which things get odd. Now, before we start, a few quick things. No, don't worry, it's not going to be a forever intro. I've been working on that. Firstly, Gantz lore has always been kind of a mess, due to Oku's inability to explain stuff, and worse, where he does, he tends to contradict himself. So yeah, I'll be going off my own headcanon somewhat, as well as various other online resources, the Gantz wiki, message boards, and my own understanding of the series, especially as it occurs in Japan and the era this was written. Some of this is going to be dubious canon, some of this is going to be fanon, and some of this will have to be my own interpretations. But a lot of this should be explained, as there is stuff in Hunt 3 that people disagree over to this day. Secondly, after putting together the materials for this one, I am going to be taking a few more risks in this video than I usually do, at least in terms of the gorier panels. Although obviously some will still need to be censored, and there are a few that would be just one big censor block if I even tried. But there is so much going on here, and the art gets so damn good that it would be a shame to show you nothing. So if this video gets nuked from orbit, that's why. And holy crap, just wait until we get to the second arc, which is where this manga turns into, let's say, a bit of an edgy boy. With that said, it's time to head into Hunt 3. And spoiler, this one is amazing. Enjoy. We rejoin Kei standing in the Gantz room, except that, in an interesting contrast to Kato, he's raring to go, and this time, not wanting a repeat of Hunt 2, and despite the chuckles of the newcomers, he's already fully suited. Kei has found his thing. Oh right, we will get to know the new folks pretty fast, and some of them will be at least mildly important, so let's get a few of them out of the way. First up, Tokugawa, a heavily built Buddhist priest. He's bickering with this seedy-looking man over what exactly is happening here. Essentially, Tokugawa is trying to convince everyone that they've died. Well, he's not wrong, and that this room is a waiting room before they can all proceed to the afterlife. Limbo, essentially. Now, I am not going to be going into Buddhism too deeply here. It's a world-spanning religion, and its history and practices are outside of the scope of my silly little manga channel, let alone Japan's own idiosyncratic version, existing as an odd and occasionally uneasy fusion of Buddhist and Shinto doctrines. But he's an interesting character for a few reasons. Firstly, he's foreshadowing the primary theme of Hunt 3, which will be Buddhist iconography of all things. And secondly, priests in Japan are really interesting. I don't think I've ever met a raging fundamentalist like Tokugawa in the wild. Most of the ones I met were really chill and often modern dudes. Hell, the chap in our village used to DJ on Friday nights at a weekly event up in the city, his own EDM music. Yeah, rural Japan is wild. Oh, and we scan through the other characters, from top right to bottom left. First up, a chubby guy in army fatigues. A lot of folks think that he's an SDF soldier, but I've been digging a little deeper and according to Oku, he's only pretending. In actuality, he's a hikikomori. I've talked about this in other videos. If you want to know more, I would go and watch my Lollipop or a Buddhist series. Honestly, do that anyway, it's pretty good if I do say so myself. But let's just say shut in. He's obsessed with firearms and military games, and amusingly enough, he died choking to death on junk food while playing video games. Yeah, subtle, Oku. Over on the left is JJ. If you've seen the anime, he's easily one of the best parts, albeit unintentionally. He's supposed to be an American martial artist, but the voice actor they hired apparently didn't speak English, and this leads to some amazing reads. Go and check it out. I can't find anything more specific, but if I recall, he's based on a King of Fighters character. Let me know in the comments if you know who he's based on. Bottom right is Sei, aka... alright, so old farts like me will immediately notice who she's based on, but you youngsters might not. Sei is clearly a reference to Kim Campbell, the well-known and beloved former Prime Minister of Canada. Nah, of course it's frigging Lara Croft. From the old Tomb Raider games, and I guess the remaster, and the recent Dead by Daylight collaboration, I'm amazed just how strong Tomb Raider's still going as a series. But this is particularly Angelina Jolie's portrayal of her from the original Tomb Raider movies. You know, the ones that kicked as many young men into puberty as Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns did for my generation. She was actually completely changed in the anime, much like the Tanaka alien for fear of copyright issues. Remember, Japan has no such thing as fair use or a parody exception. Regardless, allegedly, Sei died after being shot to death by an angry suitor that she rejected after a fighting tournament because of course she did. Finally, an unassuming young man wearing glasses named Miyafuji. We never find anything out about this guy, which is weird, as he's not exactly unimportant to the plot. You'll see what I mean. The stragglers start beaming in. Kato, who does not look happy to be here. Contrast this with Kei. Hojo, who they still call Homo. Yeah, sorry folks. This is a manga from another time. Sadako, and finally Kishimoto. Kei's heart naturally skips a beat, and he looks pretty hangdog, but he's also relieved to see her. Only, she blows straight past him and runs up to Kato. Yeah, Kei, you threw her out. What did you expect? Kei's expression, you know when I said that Oku really captures what it's like to be a teenage boy? The good and the bad? That expression right there sums it up perfectly. A wonderful combination of solipsistic resentment, unrequited longing, and pure lime green jello. Yeah, Kei is not a happy camper at all. Tokugawa continues to basically try to convert those present, saying that they are being tested, and if they don't chant a sutra with him, they will fall into hell. Again, are there Buddhists like this? I don't know. Kei, however, isn't having it, and tells everyone that this place has nothing to do with religion. Tokugawa tries to argue, saying that Kato is a demon sent to tempt them at the last minute, but he stands strong, a perfect party leader. And yeah, Kishimoto is well into it. However, it doesn't exactly work, as most of the hunters, rather than donning their suits and listening to Kato, begin chanting the sutra. He tries to figure out what to do, but Kei, realizing that any chance he might have had with Kishimoto is shot, quietly slips out and starts to break down in the corridor. Yeah, while he's a bit of a wet hen, nah, that doesn't work for guys, does it? A wet car, no, I can't say that on YouTube and it's gonna sound weird anyway. He's just a bit of a wimp, I guess, but I do genuinely feel bad for him here. Remember, Gantz is, at its core, a coming-of-age story, and it's not half a bad one. We'll talk more about this in Hunt 4. However, this next bit, it sort of flew under the radar for a long time, I guess, but it's now considered really problematic. Why? Well, Kei is having a bit of a bubble where he thinks no one can hear him. Only to his horror, he sees that Sei, the Tomb Raider lady, is watching him with mild curiosity. Ouch. They actually get to talking, and she asks him, if he's an otaku. This is a term you might have heard before, although it has kind of fallen out of vogue in the last decade. It's quite similar to the way we use nerd, weirdly enough, but it's not exactly the same. Its modern usage dates back to the early 80s, and its origins are highly disputed, but allegedly, this was an obscure term to do with bookish types and comic collectors in the 60s and 70s, but then it got used in the Macross anime and was slightly popularized there. Otaku culture, at least in the manner it existed at the time Gantz was being written, is generally viewed as rising out of the start of Japan's real troubles during the lost decades, as a sort of counter-movement to the rise of what's loosely referred to as Nampa culture, young men in their 20s and 30s basically spending all their free time and money aggressively trolling for sex. Instead, otaku found that information technology and the nascent emergence of huge geek subcultures like the Gundam franchise offered a refuge from what young men and some women found to be a stressful and hollow lifestyle. That said, while the term was initially innocuous, as well as briefly fashionable due to articles written in everyday life magazines, it became used as a pejorative with a lot of hatred and disdain attached, as these feelings crept out towards the idea of otaku from society at large, even people who otherwise enjoyed manga and anime. Part of this was likely due to a popular essayist writing in manga buriko, there's a hole we won't go down today, bloody hell, who used it as a slang term for overweight, sloppy-looking manga fans with crappy hygiene and no social skills. Part of it was articles written in contemporary knowledge magazines, but in particular, the term developed its negative inference due to the widespread media coverage of Tsutomu Miyazaki, the so-called otaku serial killer. And this led to otaku being viewed as weird, undesirable, childish, and socially unwanted, much like the geeks and nerds were in the West. However, while being an otaku in the late 90s and early 2000s, which is when this was written, was basically vagina repellent, it's not exactly like that anymore. Much as with nerd culture in the West, otaku culture in Japan is now weirdly fashionable for both boys and girls, with trendy celebrities doing cosplay, reading anime, and talking about their favorite video games, which some older otaku are mildly resentful of, as in their minds, these newcomers have taken over their subculture while driving them out, and never having earned their stripes. Meanwhile, and yeah, This is Oku once again being a weirdly good writer. While Kei denies that he's an otaku, Sei, by means of body language and also what she says, reveals that she's kind of into nerds, and is also very likely a brocon. Okay, without getting too icky, let's just say that this term refers to a woman, generally in her late teens, early 20s, or even early 30s, who is drawn to younger brother-ish guys. Yeah, Japan is Japan, and you can see where this is all going. Back over with Kato, he's struggling to convince the others to suit up, but as he's actually not stupid, he tells them that the sphere is going to start playing music soon, and sure enough, it does. He thus is able to convince some of them at least to put it on. We then see our targets, and if you know a few things about Japan, you can probably place this hunt already. Maybe we will get to that later. A few of them do suit up and arm up at least. Meanwhile, Kei just comes right out with it and asks Sei if she wants to bump uglies. Well, dude, you've got balls. She's taken aback, but as you can probably guess, is keen. There is no way I can show you what follows, even censored, but in a nutshell, they get down to business right there in the corridor. All the positions. Kishimoto walks in on them exchanging fluids, and Kei basically rubs it in her face.
Hey, phrasing!
Now yeah, let's just get this out of the way. The reason this is a controversial pairing is because Kei is around 16 and Sei is 26, which yes, is pretty damn gross. Although to be fair, it wasn't quite as societally unacceptable back then, especially in Japan and especially in cases where the woman is the one that is older. I will say that my take on this is a bit more charitable though. Remember, a lot of Gantz comes down to being a heightened version of what it's like to be a teenage boy, especially a teenage boy in that era, rather than any sort of accurate societal representation. And most teenage boys I knew in the era probably would have escaped into fantasies involving them getting de-virginized by Angelina Jolie after being rejected by their crush. Does that make sense? I don't know. I will leave this one up to you. Regardless, having lost his cherry, Kei comes out looking like the cock of the walk, with his new, smoking hot bird at his side, basically glowing. This will come back around in a big way later on. Again, it's good writing despite these two being all sorts of ugh. And yes, don't worry, it's nearly time for the hunt. Kato, Hojo, and the rest of the survivors of Hunt 2 suit up, and Sei does too, giving us lots of explicit boob shots as she does, because Hiroya Oku is a horny bastard. Kato wants to try again to convince the rest to get them on, but Hojo says bugger 'em, let them die. More points for us lot. An almost Nishi-esque perspective, interestingly enough. Kato responds that the more of them that can contribute to the hunt, the better their chances are of coming back alive. It is interesting how mercenary Kei is going to become, while Kato remains this pure-hearted leader. Once again, a very interesting contrast. Oh right, there's one more character tucked away in a corner, keeping to himself. He does look like he means business though, whatever he's doing. And mild spoilers, his name is Togo, and if that sounds familiar or his design rings a bell, he is indeed heavily based on the titular character from Golgo 13, a pretty damn good and stupidly long-running series. No, seriously, this thing is twice as long as One Piece, not kidding, and despite the author's death, as far as I know, it's still going. Cliff notes, it's about a hitman sniper who often goes by the alias Togo. Yeah, Hunt 3 is just overflowing with pop culture references and nods. I probably won't catch them all, so if I miss one, I am interested to see what you come up with in the comments. Kato does convince a few more to get their suits on, but the priest, the pimp, JJ, Togo, and a few others refuse, until Kato demonstrates the power of the suit by lifting them bodily, one in each hand, with complete ease, in one of the many panels this time around that makes me grin. That's a pretty effective little lesson. Regardless, the beaming begins, and just like that, Hunt 3 is on. And yeah, they have no idea what they're in for this time. They arrive with their targets right in front of them, and people familiar with Japan, especially older tourist sites, may be able to guess where they are immediately. For everyone else, let me explain. These two huge statues are Neo, extremely powerful warriors that reflect the more militant aspects of Buddhism and both a stance against and protection from the forces of evil. You see them more in China and India from my understanding. However, these two Neo statues are incredibly distinctive in Japan. Combine this with the door and everything else, and it indicates that we're probably standing at the entrance to Todaiji Temple Grounds, a famous and ancient set of structures located in Nara Prefecture, home to many old temples, lovely nature, gorgeous women, ancient castles, and gigantic aggressive horned rats that some people call the Nara deer. No, seriously, these things are a long story. We may get to them in another video. Anyways, Todaiji is a famous place, made in imitation of Chinese temples of the era. It dates back over 1,000 years, and it played a crucial and central role in the early adoption and regulation of Buddhism within Japan, as well as its often uneasy reconciliation with and integration of Shinto practices and beliefs, back when it was a curated state religion. Also, folks who have visited this temple may know what waits inside, and yeah, I won't spoil it for now. Anyways, you should know the words to the song by now. One hunter attempts to leave the zone and gets their head kaploded. They use their scanners to ascertain that these things are indeed flesh and blood, and not just statues. Spoiler, yup. And that's just, ugh. Do these things sit around all day doing nothing? Do they poo? Because you'd think you'd hear about that on the news. I don't know why, but this idea of huge, hostile living things basically just sitting out in public and waiting for something creeps me right the hell out. It's very Masaki Nakayama in its way. Sure enough, the guardian statues begin to awaken, and Kato rallies his troops, telling them that they are about to enter a desperate fight for their lives, to rely on the suits, to use their guns, cover each other, and don't be stupid. Kato prepares to fire on one with the Y gun, as in, why the hell bother? Seriously, until the plot needs them to work, these things are about as useful as tits on a fire truck. Regardless, its mate busts out of the wooden scaffolding and moves into attack. Remember when I said that the art in Gantz does get really bloody good after a certain point? I think that Hunt 3 is that point, and it really does just get more and more awesome from here. Occasionally wobbly CGI integrations accepted. Caught out of position, the hunters rush forward and enter the gates, with the two utterly huge monsters in hot pursuit, and they find themselves on the temple grounds. But one swings, and the sheer force of the blow knocks most of them off their feet. The priest tries praying, but while it temporarily distracts one, it then just reaches over and splats him against the concrete in a great big spray of blood. I know that ironic comeuppances are another of Oku's favorite things, but Despite this guy being a bit of a knob, I don't think he really deserved that. Ah well, these things are nasty as hell, and this is going to be a fight. Let's see how they handle it. Meanwhile, under Kato's leadership, the hunters are actually doing okay against the Neo, and after a tussle, they succeed in blowing the weaker of the two's foot off in a spectacularly explicit shower of blood and bone. Yeah, as mentioned, while I am going to be a touch more daring in terms of what I can show, there is still a lot here that no, sorry. However, as the fight progresses, they start getting pushed pretty hard. These things do not mess around and make the Tanakas look positively tame by comparison. Do note here, Kato is already hammering them into a cohesive squad, and without this, they'd probably already be street pizza. We are seeing character growth here, as well as some power creep, except that the latter is not coming from transformations or heavy training. Instead, it's coming from experience, leadership, and teamwork, and I really dig that. However, despite their best efforts, things steadily go more and more pear-shaped, with even Kato at a loss as to how to win here. While their weapons do seem effective, it's not like the Tanakas, where one clean shot will kill the alien. These things are big, tough, and their attacks are so strong that they set off shockwaves, knocking everyone around. I am not going to gush too much this time around Oku's paneling, but I just love how much fun he has with it. It's something to note as you go through it. You'll go from a gorgeous multi-panel run to several huge single pages to a gobsmacking double spread and back again, and it's just so frigging cool, man. Sadly, the scans all have those big page gaps in the center. Go and check it out for yourself. You will see how good this manga looks. Thinking of his brother and their new place, Kato resigns himself to some sort of suicidal charge, only for Kei to dash forward out of nowhere like a mad bastard, slide between its legs, a nice little callback to his favorite childhood move, and blows both of its feet off. As it falls onto its arms, Kei is ready, guns akimbo, and blows those off too like an absolute frigging boss. Why haven't you bought this manga already? Finally, and yeah, another cool character beat that I didn't notice before. Kei hesitates before taking the kill shot, likely thinking of Nishi. As mentioned earlier, this weird psychotic character will honestly loom large over the manga right up until the end. We will get there. But it makes sense. It's one thing to blow the bird boss apart in hot blood and in the middle of a life or death battle, but this thing is helpless. However, Kei is becoming hardened and resigns himself to it. He knows that this is what Gantz requires, and then he blows its head off. Sorry, can't show you much of this at all. These are some of those panels that, even if I censored them, there wouldn't be much left to see anyway. Go and buy this thing if you want all the blood and tits and bums, and the occasional minge. There's your word for the day, by the way. Regardless, the hunters are astonished, but now rally. These things do seem to be killable, especially if you have testicles the size of a damn hippity-hop. Kei, however, doesn't bloody stop there. He charges the second one with everyone running after him. I swear, there needs to be a poor Frodo in here somewhere. And as he does, we see his thoughts. Bollocks to his mundane everyday life. In here, he's awesome. Which, yep, I'm not gonna argue. It does try to put up a fight, attempting to buffet them around again, but as a counter, Kei uses the suit to punch into the ground. Are you kidding me? And before they can tangle, its head suddenly explodes. What? We see the cause. It's Togo, sniping at it from a roof far away. Yeah, unlike last time, there are some decent fighters in this lot, and this guy rules. We get another fun panel as Kei walks past Kishimoto pretty deliberately, heading for his new bird Sei. Again, anyone who remembers being a teenage boy will probably know exactly what he's trying to do here, but for those who aren't gigantic jerks, he is still really keen on Kishimoto and is kind of just using Sei to try and attract her attention by means of sheer jealousy, a ploy that I'm sure has worked at least a dozen times throughout the entirety of human history. Sei, in turn, however, she's super keen on him. Lady, you're 26. This is not okay. Yes, teenage fantasies, but oh, Japan. Regardless, she tells him that she wants him to go out with her and implies that she wants to make squishy with him in the backseat of her car as soon as they're done. Kato, more observant, spots Togo, who tells him that he's amazed that so many Gantz hunters are adamant that they want to go in and brawl and, don't just snipe their targets from miles away. The X-Rifle has an incredible range, is wonderfully accurate once you get a feel for it, and it can really mess things up. However, on top of another nearby structure that I think is supposed to be Koku Fuji, a famous and extremely tall pagoda in Nara, there's a much smaller but no less intimidating Buddhist statue that, I'm not going to talk about every single statue here. If anyone wants to do them in the comments, that'd be cool and I might just pin you, but this video is already going to be way too long. The smaller statue attacks, but before the fight can really get going, JJ notices that there are about half a dozen of the things all heading towards them from Koku Fuji. Yikes. These things aren't horribly strong, but there are rather a lot of them, and then, suddenly, there is an enormous wrenching crash from the main temple building, and folks who have visited Todaiji should know exactly what's coming. They stare in horror as an absolutely gigantic Buddha statue emerges, and once it stands to its full height, this thing absolutely dwarfs even the Neo. This has to be a boss, right? And this big bugger is quite something. Although I will admit that while the CGI does create a weird uncanny valley effect that sometimes works, it also sometimes doesn't. But as to the creature itself, well, this is going to take some explaining, and that means it's time for a tangent. So, this monstrosity is what causes a lot of the arguments regarding where exactly this arc takes place, and I get it. The temple is, at least in part, clearly inspired by Todaiji, and this creature does confirm it, meaning that Hunt 3, at least to me, pretty conclusively takes place in Nara, which means that the teleporter has quite some range to it. See, Todaiji does indeed contain an incredibly famous statue, the Daibutsu or Great Buddha of Nara, an absolute unit of an artifact, almost 15 meters tall and nearly double that across, weighing a frankly obscene amount of tons. As a truly bizarre aside, a while back for some reason they x-rayed the thing and they discovered a human tooth and a bunch of very old artifacts inside the statue's knee, which are allegedly relics of the Shomu era, dating back to the temple's construction over 1,000 years ago. Yeah, in an alternate reality, this statue does actually come to life and kill us all. However, while I do still think it's 100% Nara, where argument arises is that this creature is way, way bigger than the Nara Daibutsu and is also formed, well, kind of differently, more tall than wide. It does, in fact, more closely resemble the Great Buddha of Kotokuin, a similarly famous temple in Kamakura, which I guess has led some Gantz fans to believe that Hunt 3 takes place in Kamakura Prefecture instead. This is just one of those weird things in Japan. Some places just have giant statues, ranging from merely enormous to frigging kaiju-sized. No, seriously, that is not a Photoshop, and I nearly pooped myself when I went to visit a mate in Miyagi Prefecture and saw this thing looming out of the fog. The gigantic cannon of Sendai is another bizarre rabbit hole to go down, and we won't be going down it today. Just Google it. It's quite something. I honestly don't know why some of the more recent ones were built. Again, it's just a thing. So yeah, as to the debate, in my opinion, Oku is just having a bit of fun and creating a pastiche. In regards to Buddhist iconography and ancient sites within Japan, the temple is Todaiji in Nara, but some stuff is moved around, and he also borrows the Great Buddha from Kamakura, as the Nara one would probably have looked a little bit goofy. Anyways. The titanic creature emerges from the temple like a size 12 clown from a size 2 car. Kei grits his teeth and prepares to go in on the thing, but Sei stops him, telling him that doing so would be completely insane. She's not wrong, as sure enough, he fires and manages to scratch its foot, realizing that, nope, they are going to need a bigger gun. As mentioned, the Buddha is CGI and it looks okay mostly, with the occasional janky as hell composite, but I just have to point out how well Oku does manage to capture location, scale, and movement. I mean, as you go through this thing, if there is any point where you don't know who or what is where, it's probably deliberate at that point in the story. Yeah, this manga is that good. Just look at this sequence as an example, where Kei learns that disparaging the boot is a bootable offense, and gets kicked the length of the temple grounds. We can still tell how far he flew and roughly where he landed. It might not be as easy to tell from the slightly truncated video, but you'll see what I mean when you read Gantz. The art is like Yusuke Murata amazing, especially when you factor in this many perspectives. Kato, yet again, rallies the troops, trying to get them into some sort of viable attacking formation, shooting down the trash from a distance, and then focusing fire on the boss's feet. Oh right, there's this sort of extended side objective where the temple owner arrives and thinks it's been vandalized. He then walks around with the Gantz crew trying to defend him from the huge boss and the ads, which he cannot see. It's mostly played for laughs, but as it's generally pointless, we will skip most of it, aside from one seriously cool moment later on. Do note though, this is kind of important. The creatures being hunted are slowly but surely exerting more and more of an effect on the wider world. And this is actually going somewhere, as you will see in Act 2. Oh right, speaking of bosses and seriously cool shit, Kato tries to get everyone up again, but Kei looks like he has something to prove. He tells everyone to stand back. The boss is his. Kato looks at him with a sudden weird sort of respect, saying that it finally feels like the Kei he knew as a kid has returned. Meanwhile, the suitless Gantz hunters are taking on the ads, with JJ kicking serious ass barehanded, and Togo basically carrying them with his sniping. Oh, and that awesome bit I told you about? Well, The boss is about to step on the temple owner, but Kato, Kishimoto, Hojo, and Sadako work in coordination to save him, using the power of the suits to literally hold the Buddha's foot up in the air, even as it starts driving them into the concrete like nails. Yes, the manga constantly waffles on how powerful the suits are, and this may be one of perhaps 3 moments in the manga where they do seem suitably powerful, but damn it, that's cool. Honestly, even cooler in its way. Hojo finally gets a good look at Sadako and realizes that, yeah, for a weird stalker type, she's actually insanely beautiful, and he falls head over heels for her. I'll take things that'll never happen for 500, Alex, but it's still an oddly endearing moment. I will happily admit that I am a sucker for schmaltzy mid-battle moments like this. They're just fun. They do survive without their suits breaking somehow, and Kei stares the boss down, saying that, well, it's time he got started. This is hype as balls. Let's frigging go. Kei starts by firing a concentrated volley at the thing's head and shoulders, giving it a number of small wounds and narrowly avoiding its counterattack. He also hits it on the forehead, giving it an Irma, sort of the Buddhist version of the bindi, and yet another rabbit hole that we're not going down today. Yes, Oku, that's sort of funny, I guess. This, however, really pisses it off, and it stops walking around and starts running after Kei in, this panel is hilarious. See, Oku, this is actually funny. While Kei is able to escape, the chubby gun nut gets nabbed and partially eaten in a spectacularly gross way. However, Kei is not done yet. He powers up his suit, then kicks off the ground with enough force to shatter the concrete, firing himself towards the boss. There's a brief splash of blood, and he vanishes, much to the obvious confusion of those below. Then, the Buddha begins to spurt blood from its eyes, nose, and ears, sinks to the ground, holding its head, and dies. Of course, because narrative causality, its mouth falls open, and out steps a bloody but victorious Kei. Get this, he entered through the wound on its forehead and blew its brains apart from the inside like a damn jet-propelled zergling. Have I mentioned that I love this manga? The other hunters are absolutely flabbergasted, and yeah, looks like Sei's sporting quite the wide-on watching Kei being Sungjin Woo levels of amazing. No, seriously. Solo leveling and quite a few other angsty power fantasy isekais absolutely do have some of Gantz DNA in their heritage. However, despite the boss being dead, they aren't getting teleported out, and Kato reasons that one of these smaller ads must have hidden away somewhere. Kind of like the last 2 survivors in my recent Dead by Daylight games, seriously nerf distortion, but they realize that they need to find it before the timer runs out. He tells them all to split up into 2 groups, and for Togo to stay up in his perch and snipe anything that they manage to flush out. And yes, if you hear any weird noises in the background, Baby Owl is up and about and being adorable. We also get a really well executed little character beat as they dash off, where Kato asks Kei if he and Sei are going out. Take note of this as it's quite subtle. Kei doesn't answer and instead glances over at Kishimoto. Sei, however, says, "Hell yeah, absolutely. Oh boy." Meanwhile, Hojo, Sadako, and the 3 unsuited hunters head into another temple nearby, and Hojo actually starts flirting with a pretty shy but honestly adorable Sadako. And once they're in, oh hell, they find 5 statues. 4 really intimidating looking smaller ones with, okay, we will be going with Kanon for now, but we will explain that in just a bit in the center. And yeah, this notorious bastard thing is a fan favorite. You will see why. Hojo suggests that they kill these remaining trash mobs and call it a day. So JJ, ready to kick some ass, approaches one of the outer statues. This one strongly resembling Bishamon, one of many Japanese war gods, not a Digimon, I swear. JJ punches it several times, resulting in his arm being broken. Keep in mind, he killed many of the smaller adds with his bare hands. Unperturbed, he then tackles Bishamon, but it appears to barely notice, as another of the four kills JJ by kicking his head mostly off. Holy crap! In a sudden and absolutely gnarly death. Oh bugger, these things are not weak. Meanwhile, outside, Kato's group finishes cleaning up the adds from earlier, and they prepare to head into the temple to see what's going on with Hojo's group. Inside, Sadako and Hojo go back to take on the four powerful statues, giving the two suitless chaps a chance to slip out. They do manage to take out two of the things despite getting disarmed, only to see that the central statue has gotten off its pedestal. In each of its many arms is a different weapon or artifact, and yeah, if you haven't already guessed, the giant Buddha was a mini-boss. This horrible frigging thing is the real boss. Only, to this day, there is quite a lot of rather interesting argumentation about this thing and what exactly it's a reference to. So, before we get into, well, spoilers, one of the best fights in a manga series full to the tits with awesome fights, let's do another quick tangent and explain just what the hell I think this thing is. Okay, so the boss of Hunt 3, and as far as I can recall, the final boss of both the anime and the video game, is generally referred to as Kanon, although I don't know if it's ever referred to by this name in the manga. It may well be. Kanon is a commonly referenced Buddhist deity, widely represented by statues all over Japan, generally with a huge number of arms, each bearing some sort of religiously significant object. However, Kanon is a weird choice of influence for this nasty as hell boss monster, as Kanon is an incredibly benevolent deity, often taking the role of the goddess of mercy and compassion. While, sure, it's entirely possible that Oku is doing some sort of darkly ironic reversal here, there are other parts of this design that don't make sense. For starters, while Kanon is only sometimes given statue boobs, she is female. While this creature looks decidedly male, there are other details that seem weird. The crown, for one, seems to bear either faces or skulls. Ditto what looks like more faces on the sides of its head. These are not a canon thing, but they are traits of another deity, and yeah, this is where things get interesting. See, this leads me to believe, along with some other readers, that the statue is more likely to be another, far more obscure and bloodthirsty deity, Marisi. Marisi is, from what I can tell, a much more vicious piece of work, generally regarded as a god of war. It can be either male or female, with the female variant being slightly more benevolent and the male variant being much more warlike. Marisi has fewer arms than Kanon and carries weapons in each of them. And this is the key. He has 4 faces on the sides of his head and wears a crown covered with either faces or skulls, so yeah, I'm pretty confident in saying that this is Marisi, not Kanon. And so I am actually going to be referring to this thing as Marisi moving forwards, as I think it's far more accurate. Although, much like the whole Nara Kamakura thing, I suspect that both are somewhat correct, and that Oku has just created a pastiche. Anyways. As Kato and Ko make their way into the temple, we actually get a pretty endearing moment as we see Hojo and Sadako sharing a kiss. However, as they enter, we see, oh hell, we pan out and notice that both of them are dead in the middle of their first kiss. They've been cut in half. And yeah, no, this actually hits really frigging hard. I liked both of these characters a great deal, and I looked forward to learning more about them, especially Sadako. Damn it, Oku. Kato obviously feels the same way about this insanely nasty little twist death, and rushes in yelling. One of the guards kicks his Y-gun out of his hand, but he then draws his X-pistol and shoots Morisi in its stupid face. Hell yeah, Kato. Only a wheel-like artifact. Okay, so I went down a bit of a hole trying to identify all of Morisi's items and discovered that not only are they really tricky to pick apart, there is stuff in there that is just a wall of umlauts, and I am not even going to try and pronounce them on YouTube. If someone more knowledgeable about the faith wants to have a stab in the comments, I will pin it. Anyways, yeah, the wheel rotates and the creature instantly regenerates. Oh boy. Before he can respond, Morisi flicks water at him from its urn, and oh no, Kishimoto leaps in the way. And in one of the most iconic panels in the early manga, and one you've probably seen referenced in a dozen others, it turns out to be impossibly strong acid as Kei screams and Kishimoto looks up at Kato in pain and astonished horror. The acid eats her in half. Cheesy Pete, Oku, that was ruthless. Not only did we just lose two major side characters, we have lost a main character in the space of a few pages. What follows is one hell of a sequence, as a furious Kei leaps up and kicks Morisi square in the face, while a stricken Kishimoto finally tells Kato how she feels before passing away in his arms. Things turn into complete chaos for a while. Kei stands over Morisi and just unloads shot after shot into it. Sei, on the other hand, basically dances through the ads, demonstrating insane martial arts prowess, and yeah, I cannot overemphasize how much the art here kicks ass. Now, this next bit is a touch confusing, I'll admit, but what I think happens is that despite Kei blowing its head into jelly, of course it regenerates. And when I first read this, I thought that Kei's leg had gotten sucked into its body along with its returning flesh, but it actually looks like Morisi somehow got him in the leg with the acid, burning off his foot and most of his shin. Then it cuts off Kei's arm. What the blithering fuck is going on in this manga? Did we just kill the main character? Kei falls onto his back, dying and calling out for Kishimoto. Oof, Sei. And as he does, he recalls the good times they had together at his place. Sei is naturally quite unhappy hearing all of this, and worse yet, seeing the mortally wounded Kei begins to break down. However, she squares off against Morisi nonetheless. Kato kisses Kishimoto goodbye. Yeah, I can only imagine how that tastes, and yells for Sei to grab Kei and get outside, which she does, narrowly avoiding its acid. We then get an utterly harrowing sequence, which I cannot show you much of. Kei, in agony, begs them to finish him off. They were able to tourniquet his arm, but the acid continues to eat away at his leg, which they solve by using an X-pistol to blow off most of what remains. Remember, if they kill Morisi, then anyone who is still alive, no matter how close they were to death, will be fully restored back in the Gantz room. Nice of you to remind us of this, Oku. You really do know how to get my hopes up. But how? The thing is fast, strong, and has a wide array of devastating weapons. And yes, this is where we're fully establishing that sufficiently sharp slashing or stabbing implements like swords, or substances like acid, can basically go right through the suits. Quite a design flaw, honestly, but the worst part here is its regeneration. No matter how badly they damage it, it gets right back up. Kato, however, has an idea. Meanwhile, the two suitless, seedy-looking dudes attempt to fight Marisi, who cuts their hands off. But Togo, as the last line of defense, snipes the hell out of it, blowing its head, torso, and limbs apart. I'm only now remembering that Marisi might also be a Terminator 2 reference, as it just keeps regenerating. However, because it can't reach him, it unveils probably its strongest attack, a small lantern that emits a continuous high-powered laser that... This has to be a reference to the first Resident Evil film, right? You know, the one bit that anyone remembers from that movie. And yeah, chalk up the deaths of these two. So, what the hell do they do now? As Kato retrieves his Y-gun, we see his plan, and it's not a bad one. The boss seems to be able to heal off any sort of damage nearly instantly, but it probably can't heal being teleported away. Sei and Kei have, honestly, one of the most heart-wrenching exchanges in the entire manga. Yeah, again, it might feel a bit pat when you read it the first time, but when you think about it, it actually works as a fantastic little character beat. Sei asks Kei if he cares about her at all, and he tells her that, no, not really. He was in a bad place and thought that she'd sleep with him. Essentially, she was just a rebound lay and nothing more. Ouch. However, looking at Kei's character as a whole, if I were feeling charitable rather than my usual cantankerous and cynical self, this might be him trying to be noble and getting her to run, leaving him to his death. But instead, she asks him if he'd fall in love with her if she was able to beat Marisi. He declines to answer, so she basically says that she is going to do it, and then he will go home with her after. I have no idea why, but this bit always gets me right in the feels. It makes me root for Sei, and weirdly sympathize with Kei. And yeah, because she is awesome, Sei actually holds her own. Not only dodging the blade and the laser, but smacks Marisi around, managing to remove most of its weapons, and best of all, kicks its acid back up onto it, seriously injuring the creature and, likely intentionally because I love Sei, destroys its regeneration wheel. And this absolute fist pump moment caps off Volume 7 in spectacular fashion. Volume 8 begins showing that Sei has indeed kicked every inch of this thing's ass. It is now furious and pretty badly injured, but it can't seem to land a hit on her. Yeah, I will risk showing this panel as it's dope. Half-melted, organic alien statue monsters are okay, right, YouTube? Regardless, half of its arms are gone, as are the majority of its weapons. Sei tells Kei to hold on, and prepares to finish it. Only, oh no. Oh seriously, come on. Out of nowhere, Marisi nails Sei with a laser, cutting her almost in half diagonally. She dies spraying blood and calling out for Kei because this manga wants to break my frigging heart at every turn. This is just... why? Marisi moves on, preparing to finish off Kei, only for Togo to burst out of the corpse of the huge Buddha and impale it with a trident. This manages to hurt it a fair bit before it finally succeeds in killing Togo, cutting off both of his legs and then sealing the deal with a beam through the noggin. Kato returns, finding everyone dead. aside from Kei, who looks like he's on his way out too. Worse yet, Kato realizes that he cannot afford to die here, otherwise his little brother will be left all alone to an uncertain future. He thus picks up a sword and prepares to do his best. Oh right, this is dumb. Miyafuji, remember the nerdy guy with the glasses? He figured out how to cloak, but the creature detects him and just lasers him apart before he can do anything. Lame. It also eats his brain, which, yeah, okay. This is where the hunt goes really weird. Eating the brain allows it to speak with Kato, claiming that it's Miyafuji, and okay, so it's time for some headcanon. I think that Morisi's whole deal is that it has no personality of its own, really. Instead, it builds a mind out of those it kills and eats. Kind of like the Hiver from Terry Pratchett's excellent Tiffany Aching saga. Rest in peace, man. Regardless, the creature now has Miyafuji's speech and also his mind, I guess. Except that once he's in the driving seat, Miyafuji immediately turns evil and says that he loves this new body. He is now going to do whatever the hell he wants to, first up, killing everyone present. Kato tries the Y-gun, but because this thing never works, it doesn't. Miyafuji tells Kato that whatever faint intelligence Morisi has wants to know why they came and attacked it. But this is just a cover for another onslaught. He absolutely batters Kato to the point of near death. However, it looks like Kato might have been taking the punishment deliberately to give him some kind of opening, as he finally manages to lock on and snare it with the Y-gun, losing an arm to the laser in the process. Miyafuji begins to plead for mercy, asking Kato if he is really going to kill him, and Kato, despite his gentle nature, realizes that there is no choice here. He has to go home alive to his little brother, and he thus pulls the trigger, teleporting its head away? What? I guess this was the plan all along. Only, damn it, a horrible worm-like ball of viscera emerges from the neck stump. And because Gantz bosses tend to have more phases than a World of Warcraft fight, transforms into this nightmare fuel. Is this the alien's true form? Is this a mutation due to Miyafuji? I don't know. Regardless, Kato gets absolutely pummeled again, and his suit finally breaks. But remembering his brother and wanting to avenge Kishimoto's death, he gathers his strength for one last strike. He reaches down and, at the last second, swings the sword with his remaining arm, decapitating the monster and finally killing it. Hell yes. Wait, what? As it dies, the creature runs him through with its tail, and Kato collapses. Far away, we see his brother wake up, go down to his horrible in-laws in evident distress before running out into the rainy Tokyo night. He reaches their new apartment but finds nobody there and begins to sob. Back in Nara, we see a presumably dead Kei and a dying Kato, desperately clinging to life as the rain begins to fall. But in the nick of time, the beaming begins. Oh man, what a fight that was. And now it's time for the scoring. Kei gasps and wakes up in the Gantz room, fully healed. It takes him a second to realize that he's alone. But wait, Kato's going to be beamed in soon, right? Right? Then the scoring begins. Kei has a mammoth 50 points, but desperately, hoping against hope, he asks Gantz to display the list of the deceased. And sure enough, we get confirmation. Kato is dead. Kishimoto is dead. Sei is dead. Hojo is dead. And Kato's little brother is left to his fate. The only survivor of Hunt 3 is Kay, who, crying, walks out into the rain, now completely and utterly alone. And yeah, I will give you my own confirmation here. This is real. Out of nowhere, we have just killed every single primary character besides Kay, in a sequence that this has to be inspired by the eclipse from Berserk, right? I don't know. Regardless, damn it, Oku, that was sad. That was like Bartholomew Kuma turning out to be RoboCop Terminator Jesus levels of sad. That's like Terry Pratchett's final tweet levels of sad. And yeah, thus ends the first arc of Gantz, giving us our final rule, at least for now. And I think that it's this rule, more than anything else, that makes Gantz so beloved to this day. Anyone, and I do mean anyone, can die at any moment. It is completely merciless, and I think that it's this, more than anything, that makes the fights in Gantz feel so good, as they are immediate and vital. The knowledge that, yeah, there are zero guarantees that anyone will survive any fight. Now, the next hunt is a weird one, and it also marks the start of the parts of Gantz that, yeah, while they are probably the best bits of the manga, they terrify me. Not because they're scary, but because they deal with subject matter and cultural phenomena that YouTube is not going to be a fan of, even at a discursive level. We will, however, cross those bridges when we come to them, and probably set them on fire. For now though, that's the end. Anyways, before we finish for the day, we just want to give a massive, special, double owl fist bump to our amazing patrons, without whom making these videos would be literally impossible. Seriously, last month, yet again, you helped us squeak out rent and groceries, so yeah, massively appreciated. Cheddar, Crazy, Question Man 6, Hunting for R2D2, Inukia Koji, Cal Core, Cali Caris, Opinion Custard, Piece of Yeast, Ranger Danger, Rose Montgomery, Sally Face, Woggle, Ad Clear Andrew, Camiolon, Cheshire Quill, Endymion, Aaron Arnold, Fluffy Burb, Jake, Catstown, Lance Goebel, Nate Corbin, Oishi Pun, Rafferty, Simone, Squid, William, Yorgborg, and #Hermit. I also want to give a very special thank you to our two Owlbard patrons, Jathus and Polite Crow. That is absolutely and insanely generous, to the point of being complete bananas, and I really do not know how to sufficiently express my gratitude. If you want to see more like this, there are plenty of other videos on the channel to watch, and if you haven't already, I would definitely recommend watching Uzumaki, Made in Abyss, Gantz, Lollipop or a Bullet, or Starving Anonymous. So yeah, like, subscribe, and all that good YouTube stuff. If you want to help us out, you could always head on over to our Patreon. A subscription of any tier will give you access to exclusive videos, early videos, patron-only perks, some fun stuff on the Discord, as well as a unique chat channel. White Whistle tier and above patrons also have a direct say as so far as to what series we'll be covering, so if that is of any interest to you, sign up over there. If you want something a bit different, you could also commission some art from Mrs. Owl. You can see samples and prices over on her channel, and I would get it done fast. Slots are filling up. All links are, as always, in the description. Otherwise, my friends, take care and cheers. For now, this is the Owl, signing off.